Let's move on. Actually, we have a last-minute addition to our schedule. Before we move on to our next panel discussion, I'd like to introduce Brendan Chowdhury. They're the Executive Chairman of the Global Alliance for the Asia Free Trade Area Financial Group. Are you with us, sir?
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic. Good to have you here with us, Bosphorus Summit. And let me hand over the mic to you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much for the time. And I'm coming right after Mr. Mobius, a legend in investing. So hopefully I can try to do some basic justice to the words that Mr. Mobius gave. I just want to thank you, the sponsors, for allowing me to speak here, as well as all the attendees on a global basis. I did send over a presentation which I may or may not be able to bring on board, but I will highlight a few issues, some areas where I do agree with Mr. Mobius, and other areas where perhaps I have a slightly different view towards the future and a nuanced view towards where we should be investing. Now, in terms of Mr. Mobius's view towards the emerging markets, we believe that the next decade will be the decade of the emerging markets. We look at basic indicators from debt to GDP. Debt to GDP of the emerging markets now is half that. So despite the fact that the stock markets of the emerging markets for the past decade and commodities have significantly underperformed the Western world and the growth stocks and the speculative stocks in the West, with a few exceptions, of course, like Tencent and some of the high-flying internet companies. The vast majority of companies have significantly underperformed. But these companies are very strong. They've got great cash flow, great dividends, sustainable businesses. They just aren't in the sexy world of technology that has dominated the world. Now, the COVID-related policies of remote access, remote learning, socially isolated living significantly enhance what I would call a technology bubble. We're in a 14-year bull market in growth stocks. We believe that approach is now ending. So similar to Mr. Mobius, who's focusing on high quality value investing, sustainable returns, that's where we are putting our portfolio. A few things that I do wish to emphasize. However, there are some significant negatives. If the world does not address this within a decade, the world will be going through severe social disruption. One area is, later on, if we put my presentation up and it's downloaded by the audience, page 78, we can see the differential between the rich and poor is back to the 1920s levels, pre-World War II, when we had the rise of aberrant philosophies such as National Socialism. And we're seeing elections around the world where there is a tendency towards this type of philosophy, which can be more inward focused. It can result in other areas. Initially, National Socialism that's to benefit an economy, but over the long term, it has highly negative effects for both the domestic population and the global population. So if we do look at even housing pricing, housing has become completely unaffordable for young people in urban areas, whether it's Istanbul or Rio or New York or any other major city around the world, Mumbai. Young people are struggling to live in these urban areas. So government policy has to look at some element of income redistribution through higher taxation or through ability to invest in education so our young people can be highly productive, be entrepreneurial, have the skill set to actually drive the economy forward. If we look at now, between now and 2030 and 2100, by 2050, it's estimated that 30% of human occupations will be gone due to AI. By 2100, almost 80% of human occupations will be gone. So we are in a secular trend where the machines and AI and big data is replacing that of the human intellect. A large part of our population growth right now is in the Middle East, Africa, South Asia, and those will be the populations of the future. And we need to make significant investments in education, healthcare, safety, the dignity of women and the education of women, because that's one of the pro forma predictors of GDP growth rates in these areas. So let's just table that and put that on the side, because these are long-term secular trends that are negative, and government policy and NGOs need to focus on this very aggressively. As we saw in all the previous presentations, we've got some of the leaders around the world that are doing incredibly noble work. So let's focus back on money. One of the key areas that we have strong investments in is in the commodity space. Now, the commodity space has been through a decade-long underperformance against financial assets. The world's global central banks have embarked on one of the most immense liquidity cycles ever known in human history. Those monies have gone to financial assets, stocks, bonds, property. So this is why the rich have gotten richer, and now 0.1% of the US population owns 90% of the assets. This is unsustainable. And this is why you're having social disruption around the world, including in developed countries like the United States, such as the occupation of the Jan 6th occupation of the Capitol building. So unless we address this and address the needs of a diminishing middle class, we will continue to have volatility. If we do look at the world of commodities, we are temporarily bullish on energy. Energy was a 100 million barrel per day market prior to COVID. It dropped to 80 million. It's now back up to 92 million barrels per day. But if you look at energy, it is a depleting asset. CapEx levels are too low. So right now we're at sustainable production of 92 million. So within a few months, we believe the supply-demand imbalance will be so strong that oil will go up above $100 within the next 18 months. So we are long oil at the moment. But over the long term, if you look at by 2025, 2030, electric vehicle pricing on the list price will become the same as an internal combustion engine vehicle, which then in turn means that there will be a significant shift towards electric vehicles. So we believe the long-term price of oil will decline towards the $20 per barrel level post-2030. This has huge implications for terms of trade. If you look at many countries, Turkey, Pakistan, many major population countries with young populations and rapidly increasing GDP, many parts of sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, their whole current account deficit is based on energy imports. So they will suffer in the next 2 years, but beyond that, there will be a secular boom because the terms of trade will go against oil exporting nations once the price of oil peaks and starts to decline for a decade, and will benefit the terms of trade for these countries where they can keep more domestic currency or foreign currency reserves within their nation. And that will result in a massive liquidity boom in these emerging markets that are oil imports, but there will be pain in the short term. The other areas that we're trying to corner around the world are cobalt, copper, nickel, manganese, ferrochrome, and graphene. These are the fuels of the future. The fuel of the future is battery. We have investments in one of the leading solid-state battery companies in the world, and we're a strong believer that the inputs therein will be the way of the future. So countries like the DRC, the Congo, that has 57% of the world's cobalt reserves, Australia, the Philippines, Cuba, will become among the richest countries in the world over the next 2 decades. So buying real estate in those countries, infrastructure, is a huge way to make money from our perspective because the boom will be huge. If you look at copper inventories, for example, there's only about 12 weeks worth of copper inventories above ground. The open pit copper mines now have been depleted. We're going deeper and deeper underground. Chile, which controls about well over 25% of the world's copper market, will become extraordinarily rich because copper, whether solid state batteries are using cobalt or zinc or manganese or any other metal in the future, the grids are overwhelmed at the moment, especially if you start to put electric vehicles on there and battery technology and renewable energy around the grid around the world will fail. And we saw a significant event take place in Texas. So that's another area where we have significant investments and continue to have investments. Other areas where we've strongly focused on is healthcare. The population is aging all over the world, with the exception of a few countries, as I mentioned, in the Middle East, South Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa, and parts of Latin America. The population is aging quite rapidly all over the world. The demand for healthcare will be huge, and we have invested in some cutting-edge technologies, particularly for cancer, which becomes the more frequent as the human population ages. So that's the third area where we're investing in: clean energy, healthcare, and the last one, of course, is media. We're looking at acquiring media assets all over the world, content that can be distributed not only through traditional methods but also through e-gaming, esports, and pushing it down through various channels that are non-traditional in nature. So those are the areas we're investing in. Additionally, many governments have called upon us to set up smart cities, satellite cities that are close enough to the main urban areas. But young people want to live differently. Many of them don't own cars. Keeping a car in a parking spot in any major urban area is as expensive as keeping a family there in the next tier cities. So we are developing cities smart cities that are satellite cities right next to the main area, where you have entertainment for young people. We have housing that's suitable for them. We have open spaces suitable for them. We have office space, hotels, in schools, healthcare, right within one area, run by smart cities, where we will no longer even need trash collection, where trash will be done through tunnels and bullets that will be shifted down, and that can eliminate a lot of the traffic associated with our rush hour traffic collection. We'll have smart sensors where we can shift energy and traffic in the appropriate areas. So that's the fourth area of concentration of where we are. But one area I will disagree with Mr. Mobius is we believe that we are now going to be entering an inflation cycle, in that the official inflation statistics do not reflect the actual living conditions of the middle and lower middle classes. Housing has gone up to a significant degree, that it's become unaffordable for young people in most urban areas. Even if you look at food, so much food is wasted, and food pricing pressure continues to be there. Education has been a driving force upwards, and I was quite amazed by all the work for affordable distributed education that the previous speakers have made. I think that's the most noble effort out there. Without education, our young populations in the Middle East, South Asia, and South Africa, where we have the majority of young people in the human population for the next 70 years, will not be prepared to have jobs where AI will be their competitor. This is a first generation that's competing against the machines, and we need to give them the proper tools, education and productivity and safety and harmony of life and their basic human rights to be able to become vibrant and contributing towards human society. So I'll stop my speech there and just remain quiet, and hopefully we'll have some Q&A towards the end of the end of the collective presentation. Thank you very much.
Mr. Renan Chowdhury, thank you very much. Some very interesting insight into what you feel are the bets of the future in terms of your investment portfolio. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. Good to see you here on the summit.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the common denominators of this summit here, with each and every panel, a common denominator has been the COVID-19 pandemic. So when you look at it from that perspective, not only is it a health crisis, it's surely an educational crisis. More than 150 million kids around the world have not seen any type of formal education in the last year. When you look at the number that has seen a disruption to their regular educational pattern, that number is multiple times more. So for this next session, we're going to be looking at how higher education has been disrupted by this pandemic. We're going to kick off this session with another keynote address. It's a familiar face. We had him earlier on in the summit, Mr. Talal Abu-Ghazaleh, the founding partner and president of TAG organization.
It's a real pleasure and honor for me to address this important panel on education and disruption in education. And I like the word disruption because disruptive creations are very positive, and if useful disruptions. Sometimes we forget that this term, the disruption, is not or does not mean the same thing as disturbing. It's a completely different concept, which means having something new take the place of something existing. And that's why we always should welcome disruptions in all technologies, because technology only moves forwards. There is no way in technology to go back. This is the great thing about technology, it only moves forwards. And in my old life, in my previous life, I had many occasions to talk about this very important change that is needed in education. I chaired at the United Nations a committee called ISAR, which meant International Standards on Accounting and Reporting. And that was a global committee for talking about rules and requirements for providing correct information. And that was in the year 1995. At that meeting, I was very impressed with the American delegation, because the head of the American delegation at this conference in New York, at the UN headquarters, made a presentation under the subject, the need for change in education. I said, you mean development of education? And I meant to ask that question so that we could clarify to all the participants that what we need is not to develop what is there, but to change it. And we took very constructive guidelines in that direction. I was then asked again to speak in Berlin about another important subject at the conference called Online Educa Berlin, and that was in 2010. And the subject there was, and I am very impressed with that, I was very impressed with that subject conference, on technology-supported learning and training. Wonderful statement, wonderful theme, because at that early time, although it was not early enough for me, because I started talking about the need to change education since almost half a century in educating, and I chaired the education conference of the International Accounting Standards on education in accounting. Well, whatever we can say, I can say that there is nothing more important in life than education, because even more important than food and health, because with education, the proper education, you can have better nourishment, better food, and better health. It is not just a track on its own, it's a track that supports the improvement in health and improvement in life. We are at a very important turning point now. Finally, the world has come to realize that with the advent of the digital revolution, digital age, the knowledge age, whatever you want to call it, we need new education. Education cannot stand alone and resist what we call digital transformation. The digital transformation process applies to everything in life. Everything in life. We have to go digital. And I want to be very clear that you don't misunderstand me when I say change in education. I'm not talking about moving on to online education. We're beyond that. Online education is a temporary and intermediary step to digital education. Digital education does not mean just sending messages to learn or to teach. It means a lot more than that. It means that we will have no books printed, we will have no texts, we will have no writing, we will work on all subjects of study digitally, from a digital teacher, digital books, digital students, and producing digital education. So it's a whole world, and I wrote about it in my book on the inevitable digital transformation, or the inevitable digital world. And I explained in that book, which has just come out, and it's for free. I'm not marketing my book. I circulate it for public knowledge at no cost. And in that book, I explained that everything is going to be digital. The city, the cars, the doors, everything. So I am talking about moving into digital education and not just online. Fortunately, our good friend Corona gave us a little shock and alerted us to the need to go online in education, which is only a first step to digital education, as I said, but a good and welcome first step, which I have been finding resistance for at least 3 decades in trying to explain and promote the transfer in education. This is a very important session, your panel, and I'm glad we have on this panel experts on the subject of education, and I'm sure they will be able to provide more knowledge and more information than I can, and that we will start or help at least in the disruptive process of moving from classic education, which we call in Arabic al-Kuttab. What we are now teaching is a process of Kuttab. Students used to sit on the ground. The teacher has a book from which he reads. The students have to memorize, and the students would pass an exam to say that they are good memorizers. That's our classic education is nothing more than that. That is past tense. We don't need students who graduate having studied and memorized a lot of facts and information. It's useless. We need to produce students who are innovators, creators, and who can not just memorize things, create new facts, new knowledge, and new techniques and new technologies. Thank you very much for listening to me. I am honored to be among you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Talal Abul Ghazaleh. Thank you very much. So there was an interesting question that he posed, or comment that he made. He said that, are we beyond online education? And if so, how far are we into digital education? Let's get into the specifics. I'd like to hand over the stage to the moderator of this next session, Professor Arzu Azer. She is the Vice Chancellor of Istanbul Esenyurt University. Hocam buyurunuz efendim. Thank you very much. The floor is yours. Siz efendim.
Öncelikle bu panel için
Well, first of all, I would like to thank for this
dolayısıyla bütün
panel.
örgün eğitimin dijital ortama aktarıldığı bu süreçte bu
Well,
panel
as the
derece önemli.
formal education is taking place in a digital environment due to the pandemic, this panel is highly important. Our speakers will be Professor Dr. Şirin Karadeniz,
Ahi Evren Üniversitesi
the
Rektörümüz
rector of Bahçeşehir University.
Vatan Karakaya,
Second speaker is Professor Dr. Vatan Karakaya, the rector of Kırşehir Ahi Evren University.
Alkan Üniversitesi Rektör Yardımcımız
Professor Dr. Naci, Professor Dr. Şener Bilal, the Vice Rector of International Balkan University from Macedonia, and the Higher Education Board member Naci Gündoğan will be participating online.
Sayın Hocam, Sayın Profesör Naci Hocam.
Well, distinguished professor, first of all, it's really important to start our session with you because the Higher Education Board is showing the way for the universities. That's why I would like to start the session with you. In the higher education body, your higher education board is taking and what kind of challenges you are facing with. Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me right now. Yes, we hear you perfectly, Professor. First and foremost, I would like to greet all panelists and audience with the most heartfelt sentiments and respect. As you know, due to the pandemic, both in secondary education and in the higher education, the physical education has been substituted with the online education, and we have already passed 1 year. I certainly would like to state that we have more than 8 million university students in Turkey. And the moment that we have taken the decision of continuing with the online education, 1/3 of all of our universities within a 1 week time frame, and all of our universities within a time frame of 2 weeks have continued with the online education, which is a successful, of course, implementation. Of course, we can online education, but rather than questioning the quality of the education during that time frame, we thought that providing the continuity and sustainability to the higher education is much more important. That's what we accomplished, actually. Of course, we have experience with lots of challenges, and one of them was the infrastructure challenge. I mean, it's not easy because, simultaneously, 8 million university students were taking their classes online, which led to certain bottlenecks in the infrastructure. And in addition to that, we have 18 million students on the primary school and secondary schools. So including the PhD students, 27 million students is the total number of our students in Turkey. So, which means that 1/3 of the all population started using the same network and same internet structure. And as you can imagine, no network and infrastructure can bear the load if it is used simultaneously. And unfortunately, certain students do not have certain technological equipments and have internet access. This is not a problem for Turkey only. This is a global problem that we see everywhere. And the content of the courses was not suitable for remote learning. Well, first of all, I would like to clarify that remote learning is not putting the physical education content to the online platform, because when we say the remote education, then the content of the courses should be designed accordingly. Of course, as we are going through the emergency times, we couldn't shape the content of those classes accordingly, but we are reaching to the point of overcoming those problems because most of our students and our professors have finalized their preparations in that regard. And the digital competencies of our teachers and our students was also a question mark. Although there are promising actually developments, according to a survey carried out by the Higher Education Board, it was observed that 74% of all of our teachers and university professors have stated that their pedagogical competencies and digital competencies have improved during this time frame. And of course, the inexperience of our teachers was an important challenge for us. And the loss of motivation among students due to the fact that they are apart from their peers in a campus environment was also another challenge, because we know that our students were away from the chances of socialization which was provided to them in the campus life. Of course, this deteriorated their motivation, and at the beginning, it was not a huge problem for our students to attend to the classes, but after a while, we have seen the attendance problems of our students. And one of the greatest challenges that we have had actually was the problems in terms of assessing the performance of our students. I mean, this is not the problem of Turkey only, this is the problem of any developed countries, because the limitation of the assessing tools for remote learning has actually become crystal clear. Of course, these challenges were indispensable with the swift convergence to the e-learning platforms. And with certain communiques that we have published, we try to show the right pathway to our students. And we have presented the assessment tools to our universities. And those assessment tools have been designed with the participation and the opinion sharing of our experts at the universities. And as you can appreciate the fact that in the field of life sciences like medicine and dentistry and the engineering departments where the applied courses are highly important, we had troubles actually carrying out those courses as we switched to online learning platforms. In order to tackle those problems, we have established many working groups, including but not limited to digital transformation, the remote learning working group, and the remote learning policy body. And all those working groups have shared their opinions. As a result, the decisions taken by the General Assembly was reflecting the repercussions coming out of the meetings of those working groups. And we have taken many decisions, which I cannot list one by one, but you can see them in our presentation. We have taken many decisions. Pandemic is a very dynamic process because everything can change all of a sudden. That's why we try to take our decision as swiftly as possible. And we have shared those decisions in our website. We have changed our legislation, and the code of conduct with regards to the remote learning in the higher education institutes have been prepared. New normalization guideline during the global pandemic has been a guideline. Any probable issues which might pop up during the new normal life has been mentioned and tackled in this guideline. We have developed a lot of projects. One of them was the digital transformation project, which has been ongoing for the last 2 years, but thanks to the pandemic, it gained further importance. We actually have carried out lots of applications in order to develop the digital competencies of our professors and our students. We have established a high education board courses platform, and the digital content of the courses of our open university has been uploaded to this platform. Of course, this is not enough, but our open university will be developing the content and the courses for the digital environment, and the standards are about to be determined. The European Open University Association has a wonderful application. The application is called Open Update, and they created a book platform. So we thought whether we can found a similar platform. We have a remote learning platform which is open for 15 universities, and via Sakarya University we opened this platform for the discussion of our universities, and we also have High Education Board virtual lab. General chemistry and general physics classes have been given via this virtual platform, and the content of the courses have been prepared in the digital platform, and 15,000 of our students in 18 of our universities have taken those classes, but we will increase the number. So at the end of the day, 50,000 of our students from 48 different universities will be taking those virtual lab classes. This is a pilot study, of course, and I am sure that our universities will do better than that. So hopefully the content will be actually transferred to the virtual platform. Of course, new opportunities popped up. As you can imagine, rather than constructing new buildings, hopefully, our universities will be saving time. So wonderful opportunities will pop up. So lifelong learning opportunities will be increasing, and at the same time, our students will have a chance to take classes from other universities in Turkey and abroad. Last but not least, let me share the striking results of a survey carried out by our Higher Education Board. We have asked this question to our students and professors: how should the education be after pandemic? And 1.2 million of our students have answered to this question. As you can see, 29% of our students have stated that the university education should be taking place online, and 25% of them stated that the online education should be combined with the physical education. So you can easily understand how the perception is changing. When we ask this question to our professors and teachers, 4% of them wanted a physical education, but 56% of them wanted either a totally online education or a hybrid education. If we, carried out this survey 1 year ago, what would be the result? We have no idea, but we do believe that the perceptions towards the online learning have changed remarkably. Of course, quantitatively speaking, we have progressed a lot, but we also have to increase the quality of the education. If you have questions, I will do my best to answer your questions. Thank you.
Aslında süremiz kısıtlı ama ben sizi bulmuşken bir sorum var. Onu sormadan geçmek istemiyorum.
Well, we have a
Şöyle ki Harvard Eğitim Enstitüsü
question.
bir anket çalışması yaptı 98 ülkede.
Harvard University carried out a survey in 98 university. According to this survey, they try to understand the challenges and troubles and how those troubles can be tackled. So this is a problem that we see among our students, because there is a problem of inequalities, because in the past there were problems in terms of the capabilities of the universities, but right now most probably students do not have a necessary environment where they can easily take their classes. Maybe they are living with a crowded family, or they have internet access problems, or they lack the technological tools. So at the end of the day, this leads to inequality, or at least this might lead to an inequality. On that regard, what kind of projects you are trying to develop?
Aslında gerçekten bu dünyanın çok güzel bir noktaya temas ettiniz. Bu dünyanın
You have touched to a very important topic, and this is the problem of all the countries. So this was a problem even before the coronavirus. I mean, this digital cliff and abyss was present even before the coronavirus. We are taking every necessary precautions, especially the students living in the rural areas might lack the infrastructure, but we try to improve their infrastructure by writing directly to our universities. We actually supported and asked for the support of our universities to open their computer labs to be used by the students who lack the internet access. And I mean, the universities actually took it wonderfully, and 50,000, for example, students will be making use of those labs. I mean, Ankara University student might be, living in Hakkari. Maybe the internet access might not be wonderful, because especially the virtual lab classes requires, a higher technology computers. That's why we have communicated and corresponded with the universities. I mean, if those students are living, for example, in a rural area where the internet access is not suitable, then we kindly requested from our rectors in those universities to open their computer labs to be used by those students. Last year, we have corresponded with the Ministry of Education. Of course, the Ministry of Education has a broader network, because they are also covering the villages. And we also kindly asked their support, but up until now, we didn't receive huge complaints or huge bottlenecks. And hopefully this period, we will, try to tackle this issue in the same manner as we have done in the past. But let me remind once again, 1,255,000 of our students, 83% of them stated that they have the necessary hardware, and 80% of them have stated that they have no problems with regards to the internet access. Of course, I'm speaking on behalf of the higher education. It is wonderful that they have those opportunities, but for our students who lack those technologies, we try our best to support them. And we also would like to thank the presidency's digital office and the strategic budget DG. We are still corresponding with them, and hopefully we will do our best to support our students who are in need of those technologies. And let me also state that last year we have spoken with 3 of our GSM operators, and they have stated that they support actually our students who lack those opportunities. Thank you so much, Professor.
Biraz kısıtlı olduğu için ben genel bir soru sorup hepinize soracağım. 10'ar dakikalık bir süre tanımam gerekiyor. Aslında sorularım çoktu ama şu anda tek bir soruya...
In fact, I had many questions, and my first question is that we did make transited all the system to remote education in line with the instructions of the Higher Education Board. There are also universities providing formal education. My question is as follows. During this process, during this distance education process, artificial intelligence was also used in education. My actual question is, there are many discussions about it. After the pandemic, will we continue distance education, or in this education, or is this just a small part of the education? Because it's not only lecturing, but also a social atmosphere universities after the pandemic. So the dominance will be on distance education, or to improving the formal education conditions. Let's start with Professor Dr. Singh. Yes, thank you very much. There are really distinguished speakers, and I hope a fruitful day for you all. First of all, I'd like to thank to Naji because as the frame direct decrease higher education board, we try to provide a continuous education for all the students, and a design has been formed for them. Actually, instead of hierarchical structure in the management of universities, more flexible and different designs with more input have been started to be formed. So, presence of a design of a framework helps us in drawing our roadmap, and also each university started to do their unique design. So in this panel, there are distinguished rectors, and what any decree they make at the universities may be different from another university. This differentiation is stemming from the nature of the university. For example, as Bahçeşehir University, we have students from more than 100 countries, and we have 6,000 international students. And in time, those students return to their countries, and even our airways is closed with some countries, and those students want to continue their education. And in that sense, our decision may be different from another university. Therefore, after actually our boards make different decisions from measurement and assessment to the end of the semester, for example, may change. And I want to underline that during this process, after the pandemic, we have gained much experience as the lecturers, as the students, and as a result of the survey done by the Higher Education Board, we saw that the students, the youth, want a hybrid structure. Actually, towards a hybrid life we are continuing, and at some point in education it will be the same. We will not totally leave these online designs, but our face-to-face designs will also continue because there is a social and psychological environment of a university as well, and it also improves the social features of the young. And it will be a blended one, a hybrid structure, but this may be different per university. And at the senators, we take a decision. We take a different decision for medicine faculties and for the faculties of law. Therefore, it may depend on the nature of the faculty and practice. There may be different designs. And in the transformation process to hybrid university during the summer, as Bahçeşehir University, we put quality in the front line because quality in education is important. So your target is clear then. While studying on our quality works, we have written down 321 quality standards. And in terms of management, in terms of governance, in terms of student relations, I mean all the learning and lecturing uh, experiences have been written down. And we also scanned the literature, and also we made an interview with all the staff of the university, because you know that cognitive works involve all the stakeholders. Therefore, during this process, we formed our quality standard, and it is published on the website of our university. And our purpose here is to enhance the quality of education, and it's an open, it's a source open for the other universities as well. Therefore, the quality of education is in the center, and we will rely on hybrid structures. There will be a dense use of technology, of course, and virtual labs, for example, are quite important for practicing. And engineering and architecture students needs virtual lab platforms, and a license. Access to licensed software is very important for developing a project. And when a medicine student is in turn intervening in a patient on site, very important. Therefore, hybrid designs depend on the nature of the field and depends on the technology development. And therefore, we cannot say that we cannot compare formal and distant education, but we need to focus on how to integrate them. So my field, my expertise is education technologies, and I am working on how to design efficient and productive education platforms. And actually, we have traditional Turkish TUSA, which is Aşure, um, where different kinds of plantains and fruits and vegetables are cooked together, and everyone has his or her own way to cook it. And it is the same for education. When there is a framework regulation, when there is a basic standard, then you can build upon it. And artificial intelligence is also the future of the technology, is also indicated by Garner's report. And the privacy law, the confidentiality law is also very important about the individuals, the private data, cybersecurity, storing the individual data. With these data, we will support students, which require, of course, infrastructure investments and new education designs. And with the distant education centers established in our universities and support to the lecturers, and also training the students and lecturers, and supporting the research assistants are also important, which is understood throughout this process. In my opinion, a hybrid education will start considering growth in education, 360-degree designs will be in practice. Why I underline is that a university is a series of experiences. It doesn't only improve academic development, but there are psychosocial, moral, ethical developments for personality as well. Therefore, all kinds of communication activities must be accessible through hybrid structures. And we need to make use of technology. We cannot exclude distant education, and a proper blend of this is required. Thank you very much. It was a good perspective. And the same question is directed to Vatan. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to salute all the participants for the very distinguished director. Yes, we talked about hybrid education or face-to-face education, and the most important point is quality, she said. And with the pandemic, of course, in this process, we need to focus on the intellectual designs. Actually, the concrete is back behind, and those huge buildings are no longer meaningful. And finding a quality person is important, because the actual thing here is the kind of a person. Therefore, we need to make sign designs. Actually, we need some intellectual skill designs and how to put forward them. Actually, I started to work as a director since 2015, and this is a private problem of mine, because I really focused on this, and a pilot project was developed by me in 2016 in Kashira University, which we implemented the project as pilot. pilot scale. And for a profession, there was a program opened, and finally, the specific talents, the specific skills were given within that program to the relevant students. And in order to identify those skills in the scope of professional capabilities and their indicators, we designed our programs. And that definition defines the capabilities of the student as a graduate, and we then evaluated the students after the graduation, and we also designed our curriculum accordingly. I think it was the first because the curriculum evaluation was made for the first time by us. Actually, the educating material was not equal to the receiving education receiving source. Actually, as a lecturer, I am providing a detailed and comprehensive course, but my question is quite superficial during the examination. Therefore, while designing our curriculum, the gains identified by the lecturers, especially the cognitive, sensorial, and behavioral categories, were identified. And when a lecturer provides gain, then there is analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. And if your lecture is at the analysis level, and if you ask questions at the cognitive level, then there is no use in this evaluation. Actually, we developed a system, and we have applied for the patents of this. Actually, in this program, we have designed an office. Let me share it with you with the visuals. This is our education design. I don't know if it is visible or not. And this is the management design. With these two designs, now we are continuing our education at our university. And with this, we created a curriculum office. And at that curriculum office, the lecturer says that this is the expected gain and this is the learning output. It's the trial one, and after these gains and output are approved by the office, then it becomes the duty of the lecturer. And before the examination, the lecturer prepares questions to be tagged with that output or with that gain. And under the system, gainings are warranted, and there is a logical claim under this. Actually, whatever the lecturer provides, it will be questioned from the student, because this is a field which is open for subjective approach, and such a system has been established by us, and then the equal equal indicator tables were prepared from the structure. And while preparing the measurement questions, the level of the measurement was also categorized with the gains at the cognitive, sensorial, and behavioral items. And the gains are tagged with these questions, and these gains are open to the students through interfaces. And the education materials and all the opportunities provided by the informatics are provided to the students as education materials. And with this system, actually the questions are also approved by the office. Therefore, a high-level question bank is prepared. There are nearly 30,000 questions, and during this 2-month process, we have come to that point. And this is an intellectual skill, intellectual design actually. We need to go away from the classical code understanding, because in classical code understanding there are just workflows, but this is an intellectual, this is a mental design. And with university and sector cooperation, we ensure that as the lecturers we designed it, and the companies develop the codes for those designs. We will also share it with other universities. We have applied for our patent, as I said, and whether it is formal or digital, this system will meet all the expectations online. Actually, I do not use an Zoom, Teams, etc. I'm using an open source code, and all the data is saved by me. I mean, the data is saved, and we can also conduct 100 live classes simultaneously. And this is the design of ours. It's called IDEP, Digital Education Portal. There are near 10 menu items, and all the designs required by the legislation can be uploaded to the system, and it's called authorization from the program responsible and to the rector. All the authorities can be used. And second main item is program development. In the framework of the professional capabilities, programs are improved and skills are warranted for the critical graduates. And third item is the examinations, preparing the questions, preparing the indicators, and tagging the gains for this. And distance education is not a question of face-to-face education. There are also rubrics for the homeworks, and we are turning them into scores. Therefore, access of students are ensured, and this is already implemented at our university for 2 months, and this the first stage has also been passed for the patent, and after the pandemic, this will be implemented as hybrid or formal, I don't know, but quality is at the core. And of course, during this process, the universities use their own technologies and created some systems. Now, when I say this process, until now during the pandemic, 2.6 million people passed away, and the number of cases with symptoms is 116,000. And in Macedonia, the number of deaths is 163. Actually, it's quite low when compared to the other countries. And what do you do in this process? Thank you very much. Actually, I was going to speak in English, but now I am turning into my native language now, as I was already educated in Turkey, and I'm from International Balkan University. We are a small country and our population is not as much as yours, but COVID actually is a thing that brings both the advantages and disadvantages. Of course, disadvantages and actually damage is quite high. And International Balkan University was established in 2006 as a non-profit university. Our adventure started and our works during the pandemic period started 2 years ago. We just wanted to make a trial as a rectorate. Actually, as we are an international university, most of our students are from Europe and other countries, and our education language is English in all the departments. we started work as the association management and as the rectorate, and in two phases we worked. Our first phase was R&D, and the second phase was to practice the result of the R&D. Actually, when we look at the scientific researches, the results are as follows. Actually, in the classical education system and the current education system, there's a conflict actually. 20th and 21st century education systems are in conflict, and therefore these conflicts may be between the student, the lecturer, or the education provider and receiver. And this clash, this conflict, is actually uh, caused by the new demand of the segments of students. Actually, new generations are gathering knowledge, and they do not want to memorize. We saw this actually, and they do not want to memorize, but they want to solve the problems with their own ideas. And as a result of these ideas, they want to share. They want to use their ideas in the global competition. That was their demand. That was their expectation. And it was to some extent being a global citizen, and it was a lifelong learning logic, especially in the new generation. I'm trying to sum up their expectations. They do not want to be passive acceptors, but they want an active education system. I mean, of course, there is an information explosion in the 21st century. Information is accessible all the time, and therefore, how those information will be provided to the students. The new model was required from the lecturers, and to some extent, in this research, uh, we can say that learn less, learn more. Logic was dominant in the new generation. And when we look at the characteristics of the students, a new system, a new structuring was required at the International Balkan University. And 2 years before the pandemic, we started this process, as the language of education is English, and when you are in the heart of the Balkans, I mean Northern Macedonia, and when you have students from different countries, an umbrella language is used as English. When we determine all of these in the structure of our university, we formed a hub lab in our university. And in IT sector, there were academicians in our university. And 5 years ago, when we say hello, uh, uh, an online system was created, which is called Hello. This is a student interface system. This is an introduction system for the students, which is titled Hello. And 2 years before the pandemic, we started to use it. And at the lab called Hub, different online platforms were integrated. When a student enters the system, three options were seen by the students.
Görünce biz de bu platformu uygulayacağız diye planlıyorduk. Pandemi
So as we see that, I mean, this was successful. We thought that we will be implementing this platform, but the pandemic broke out. And without changing the time and date of this platform, we only activated it. So without changing the time frame, our students started taking their lessons online, because we have seen that since they are international students and they know the language, they are quite suitable for online courses. We don't actually define it as an online platform, but we rather define it as the synchronized platform, because it is not totally an online platform, but the assessments and the homeworks and the projects are actually distributed from this platform. And there is a separate platform in which students can accept and choose their courses, and the assessments have been carried out from the same platform as well, so that with comparison to other universities, we provided a synchronized education rather than giving online education only. As the second wave of the pandemic broke out, the registry and the enrollments have been carried out online as well. And we also try to receive feedbacks from our students and the users of the platform. As Mr. Naji also presented graphics, our data looked similar to their graphics as well. So most of our students would like to continue with the physical education rather than an online education, and our professors also prefer physical education rather than the online education. And of course, we will be subject to the decisions of the Ministry of Education in Northern Macedonia, but we are focusing on synchronized hybrid education giving. And the Macedonian students will come to our campus, and our amphitheaters and our classes are embedded with such huge screens, and the international students will be making use of those synchronized education platforms and the hybrid education platforms. Of course, our final decision will be shaped according to the decision taken by the Ministry of Education of Northern Macedonia, but there is a ambitious call coming from our students to continue their education in a physical environment rather than an online education. But since our students are taking their classes, in an online platform without any interruption, we didn't receive huge complaints. And as the International Balkan University, hopefully, in order to protect our reputation, we will be implementing one of those three models that I have mentioned. Time will show which model we will be opting for. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Şener. Well, I have to adjourn the session due to the time limitation, but there are numberless of topics that we have to discuss in the field of education. The transformation in the education sector has speeded up due to the pandemic, but unfortunately, we will not be able to discuss what will happen in the future. Hopefully, in a different panel, we will have this opportunity. Thank you so much for your participation. I also would like to thank our speakers. I wish all of you a wonderful day. Thank you.
Hocalarım çok teşekkür ederim. Sağ olun efendim.
Thank you very much, professors.